Hello and welcome. My name is Dominic Frisby and today's piece is called Where Do Thoughts Go? Now, shortly after my father died, I remember saying to my eldest daughter, where do thoughts go? What happens to them? My father was a writer, so many of the thoughts he had, he wrote down and he preserved in some way. But what happened to all the ones he didn't record over the course of his life? Is that it? Are they just gone? Studies suggest a typical person has 7,000 thoughts a day. Others put that number 10 times higher, 70 to 80,000. That seems a lot to me. Some people, from what I can see, don't even reach double figures. But 80,000 thoughts a day would work out at close to one thought per second. It depends how you define what a thought is, I guess. Many thoughts are repetitive. We have the same thought over and over because we forget that we've had it. But whether it's 7,000 or 70,000, we have a lot of thoughts. So, of those many thoughts you each have each day, how many do you actually recognise or acknowledge? A tiny percentage. Of those thoughts you do recognise, how many do you then articulate or speak aloud in some way? Again, a tiny percentage. So we're at a tiny percentage of a tiny percentage. Of those thoughts that you articulate, how many do you actually record, perhaps write down, or even speak aloud to a video? Of those you record, how many do you actually act on and turn into something, an even tinier percentage? So of all the thoughts we have, a tiny percentage of a tiny percentage of a tiny percentage get recorded, and an even tinier percentage actually become something. Now let's extrapolate that over a life. A typical lifespan is 27,000 days. That makes 1.9 million or 1.9 billion thoughts over the course of your life, depending on whether you're a 7,000 or a 70,000 thoughts per day person. 1.9 million or 1.9 billion. Now, if you extrapolate that across human history, all the thoughts that every human being has ever had, something like 117 billion lives have been lived. That's what Google says. 117 billion multiplied by 1.9 million or 1.9 billion is a lot of thoughts. What happened to them all? Where did they go? Where are they now? Is there some ethereal warehouse, up the street where they're all stored? Or, if those thoughts are now gone, unrecorded, unacted upon, what then was the point of having them? Recording my thoughts has always been something that's obsessed me quite a lot. Even as a child, I used to keep a diary and I tried to record as many of the ideas that I had, the interesting ones at least. But I've got notebooks full of ideas. And I was recording them because I was worried I'd never have that thought again. And as I say, I've got piles of notebooks, not to mention notes and voice files on my phone or my computer. But I very rarely go back and look through them. And I doubt anyone else ever will. So I may as well not have bothered. Those thoughts are going to disappear, even though I wrote them down and attempted to preserve them. What was the point of having them? So let's just park that thought for a moment while I ask you a question. Why did Christianity and Judaism succeed where other religions failed? Of the plethora of religions that existed around the Middle East 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, why did Judaism survive but none of the others? Is it because the Jews are God's chosen people, as my Jewish friends constantly like to remind me every time I bring this question up? Or is it because the Jews wrote theirs down, they set it in stone? Other religions were passed on orally. Even better, as I say, they inscribed their 10 Commandments in stone. Why did Christianity supersede all the pagan religions of Northern Europe during the Dark Ages? The Northmen were the superior force militarily. Surely their pagan religions should have conquered too. And with the likes of Odin, Thor, Loki, all the druidic religions of the Celts, many of these pagan religions were much cooler than Christianity. Why did Christianity conquer? Because the Bible was written down. Pagan religions and traditions were passed on orally. It's a much less reliable way of transferring thought over time. So you can see the power of preserving thought and the influence it can have on history. But do thoughts exist? Do thoughts have matter? And this is a question that occupies the minds of philosophers far more profound than me. I'm not even sure I count as a philosopher. Thoughts must have some kind of matter, runs the argument, because it takes energy to have them. If we do a lot of thinking, we get tired. The brain uses at least 20% of the body's energy, even though it makes up maybe 2% of the body's mass. Perhaps a thought is just a little parcel of energy. But I ask again, what happens to thoughts after we have them? If we don't record or articulate them in some way, are they just gone? Or is there some kind of ethereal depository where all thoughts get stored? Some kind of collective human consciousness warehouse that we haven't discovered yet? Now, I'm one of these people that thinks most invention is discovery. And just as Alexander Fleming didn't invent penicillin, he discovered it, so did, say, Thomas Edison and many others not so much invent the light bulb as discover the technology that makes light bulbs work. Did man invent the wheel, or did he discover it? My friend, who goes by the name of Low Status Opinions, who as well as having a brilliant Substack writes jokes for famous comedians, he says the act of writing a joke is not invention, rather it's pulling back the sand to see what's there. The veteran commodities speculator Peter Brand says something similar. A trade is a process of discovery. You place numerous trades, you manage your risk, and you discover which work. Today, with digital technology, our lives are taken out of the material world and into cyberspace. Of course, there are huge data centres that make it all function, but in a way, this ethereal digital world of the internet, with all its social media, better represents our thoughts and the preservation of them than the paper and material world that preceded it. So, is there some depository or warehouse of thoughts that we haven't yet invented or discovered? The idea that we only use 10% of our brain's capacity has been largely dismissed, but we definitely have latent brain power that we don't use. Taking psychedelic drugs perhaps unleashes latent potential. There is an acquired have you heard of this acquired savant syndrome, when you can acquire often extraordinary scholarly capacity after a traumatic head injury? And the most famous example of that is a guy called Jason Plaggett, who was mugged, badly beaten up, and then woke up to find that he now had an ability to understand complex maths and physics that he did not previously have. He developed an astonishing ability to draw complex geometric shapes he had no previous understanding of. So there is for sure some untapped potential in our minds. I wish I knew how to tap into it without risking long-term damage. There are a gazillion ideas I've had for stories, shows, businesses, products that I would love to realise in some way. But then again, genius is 99% perspiration. Having the idea is the easy bit. A Scottish audio producer friend had this to say when I bemoaned to him how ideas disappear. Nature wastes nothing, he said, with the power that only a Scottish accent with its articulated consonants can have. That's why they make such good football managers. Nature wastes absolutely nothing. Everything gets used in some way. And he's right. Nature is not like governments or corporations, which can be incredibly wasteful. Nothing in nature gets thrown away. Everything gets used. That's why I'm so pre-markets and so anti-regulation and anti-government. The free market is the closest economic rendition of the natural world that we have. Yes, nature wastes nothing. The process of thinking and having ideas, even if those ideas appear to disappear if we don't record or act on them, there is a purpose to it, even if we have not yet discovered what it is. What though? I guess if there's a moral to today's piece, it's this. Don't keep your thoughts to yourself. What do you think? Where do thoughts go? If they disappear, what's the point of having them? Just for the few that we do act on. Post your thoughts in the comments, and thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for being a subscriber to this channel, and please subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Until next time, goodbye.